Hi, I wanted to share this little interesting observation I made. What we're looking at here is a chart of when the New Testament books were written and what period of time the books covered. For instance, Matthew covered before Yeshua was born. Uh, they say he starts his Matthew account from 5 BC to 30 AD. Uh, the account of Yeshua's life and a little before to his ascension around 30 AD. Granted, these are approximate, of course. Mark's book was the last part of Yeshua's life here on earth. He goes to the ascension. But notice, like in Matthew, that Matthew wrote his book around 50 AD, which was about 20 years after Yeshua ascended. Mark wrote his book way out here between 65 and 70 AD. Notice that. And then here's John down here, which he covers about the same amount of time of Yeshua's life as Mark does. But John writes his book way out here, which is around like 90 AD, which is way past Paul's ministry. Paul's ministry, evidently, according to Luke, it starts around Paul converted around here, which is around between like somewhere between 35 and 40 AD, which was well past Yeshua ascending. And his ministry goes around from around 37 AD until almost 65 AD, right? And what I thought was interesting is Matthew writing his book of Matthew around 50 AD, well into Paul's ministry. I mean, this is 20 years after the ascension, and Matthew would have been well acquainted with Paul. Mark would have been well acquainted with Paul, and Mark wrote his book around, like 67 AD, even after Paul's ministry was ended. John, way out here, about, 25 years after Paul's ministry. About 25, a little over. John writing his book way past Paul's ministry. Revelation even further past Paul's ministry. Revelation down here was written right before 100 AD. The question that I'm bringing up is if Matthew, Mark, John all were well familiar with Paul's ministry, but none of them even really mention him. Well, Revelation, I think, mentions him, but that may just be me. But they don't exalt Paul. They don't draw attention to his ministry at all. They don't exalt him or anything. And I find that very interesting. And here we are, 2,000 years later, and most people have built their very foundation on Paul's writings, but it seems to me that the real apostles don't really give him much credit in their books. But anyway, that's just an observation I made. Thought that was pretty interesting. This chart is very informative. I should probably give credit to it. It is called the Bible Overview Chart by Kenneth E. Malberg. and it was put out by K.E. Malberg in 1998. And there's the credits for that. And it's also got the Older Testament too. But I just wanted to, 'cause I thought that was pretty interesting that nobody really exalts him as he does himself. But anyway, hope you found this interesting.